You're listening to the I'm Busy Being Awesome podcast with Paula Engebretson, episode number 221. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. How are you? I hope you are ready for a big episode today because we are exploring the topic of ADHD paralysis. Now, this is a topic that I think is so very present and so relatable for those of us with ADHD and ADHD tendencies. And it's also something that when we pause to think about it, can leave us feeling really quite frustrated and stuck. So, with all of that in mind, I first hope that this episode will help ease some of that frustration and really give us a new way to start thinking about ADHD paralysis generally, if and when it comes up. And I also want to offer with this episode one of the most powerful questions you could possibly ask yourself to help unthaw the freeze that is paralysis and gently give yourself a boost so you can start moving in the direction you want. So, to start out, let's talk about what ADHD paralysis is in the first place. Okay, so we're going to start by looking at what ADHD paralysis is more generally on the macro level. And then I want to zoom in and talk about the three different subcategories that make up this experience. But generally, ADHD paralysis is this experience that many of us with ADHD have when we feel completely overwhelmed and frozen and frankly unable to move forward. It's often when we're thinking to ourselves something like, I know what to do, I'm just not doing it. I know you've heard me say that phrase on this podcast before if you've been listening for a while, right? It's such a familiar concept. I know what to do. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know the plan. I have an idea of what I'm supposed to do. I'm just not doing it. Chances are we're stuck in that paralysis. Now, for many of us with ADHD and ADHD tendencies, we can get quite hard on ourselves when we're navigating this paralysis. We might label it as procrastination. We might start beating ourselves up, thinking that we should just be able to get started. And this is one of the first things I want to highlight in this episode. There is a difference between procrastination and ADHD paralysis. Now, they may look very similar, but there is a key distinction that I want to highlight, and that distinction is information overload. So when we face ADHD paralysis, it is because our brain is overloaded with information or stimulation or racing thoughts or big emotions. We're not just putting the thing off because we don't feel like doing it. We're not getting started because our brain is flooded or overloaded and it can't move forward. It's in paralysis. Now, what does this look like? How do we know? So ADHD paralysis can present itself in a handful of different ways in lots of different situations. Okay, so it could look like feeling really overwhelmed and you're unable to start or finish tasks. It could look like putting things off until the last minute or kind of avoiding them altogether. It might look like struggling to make big or small decisions, whether it's what to make for dinner or whether or not you should take the new job. It could look like feeling anxious and stressed about different tasks or responsibilities. And those feelings that you're feeling are so big that you can't get started. It might look like losing motivation and feeling really discouraged because you've been working towards something for a while and you're not seeing the progress that you want. You may feel like you're constantly behind schedule or behind in life generally and unsure what you can do to quote unquote catch up. Now, I could keep going on this list, but I'm guessing you get the idea here, okay? I have a feeling that many of you listening can at least hear yourself in one or two of these experiences. And if you do, again, please hear me when I say it's not you. Okay, this is part of your ADHD. This is what it means to have ADHD. It's not that you're lazy. It's not that you just need to try harder. It's because your brain at different points has become flooded with too much information and it's stuck in that paralysis. Now, as I mentioned, this list that I just gave is kind of a broader overview of ADHD paralysis generally. But when you zoom in on the topic, if you ever do any research on it, you'll find that people tend to divide ADHD paralysis into three different categories, which I find to be quite helpful in putting your specific experiences into context. Okay, so let's talk about these three different categories. And as I explain them, I invite you to make note of whether any of them are common obstacles for you or not. You may find that some of them are bigger obstacles than others. You may notice that you face one category more often at work and another at home. My goal here is to help you create some awareness of where you might be navigating this paralysis most often, so that when we talk about the supports you can put in place toward the end of this episode, you'll know where to start first. So, the three different categories include mental paralysis, task paralysis, and choice paralysis. Now, before I talk about what each one of these looks like specifically, I do want to offer a friendly reminder to not get too caught up in the specific categorization. So, our brains do love to slip into black and white thinking in situations like this. Okay, it's pretty easy to slip into that. And we start thinking that we have to make sure our experience fits nicely into this one, or hold on, wait, is it mental paralysis or task paralysis? Okay. When I reflected on these three categories, I actually noticed that some of my areas of paralysis seem to overlap in the different buckets. Okay, so with that in mind, I don't think it's absolutely critical to know specifically every single bucket that you may be in for every single situation. Instead, I think it's useful to have this general understanding so that you can put your experience into context and then have a better idea of where and why you might be feeling stuck, or when you tend to get stuck most often. Okay, so now let's talk more specifically about these three categories, starting with mental paralysis. So, according to ADD.org, we see that mental paralysis comes up most often when somebody is feeling really overwhelmed by all of their racing thoughts or by too much information, right? Information overload, or they're experiencing some kind of sensory overload. I think of it for myself a little bit like, when there's the spinning rainbow wheel on your computer when it locks up because it's doing too much, there's too much information that your computer is trying to process all at once. And you're sitting here staring at this spinning wheel and you're like, okay, you're either going to finish the task or you're going to force quit that program or you're going to shut down altogether. Not sure which one, but something's going to happen. I think of that as my brain when I am in mental paralysis, right? We're kind of in this information overload and it's just spinning. We're like, I don't know what's going to happen here. We're stuck in this paralysis. Okay. So mental paralysis, it might look like staring at your to-do list, all of that input, right? And feeling completely overwhelmed. And you're seeing so many tasks written out. You have no idea where to start. Your mind starts racing. You feel this paralysis by this sheer volume of work as you're wondering how on earth you're going to be able to get anything done, right? How you'll ever make a dent in the list. So that is mental paralysis. The second category is task paralysis. Okay. So again, according to ADD.org, task paralysis can look like a person feeling, quote, hesitant or scared or unmotivated to begin a task, close quote. And because of this, they may find themselves procrastinating or doing something else or zoning out or daydreaming. Generally, they're avoiding the specific activity altogether. Okay, so with mental paralysis, it's more of a feeling of overwhelm and the racing thoughts about not knowing where to start or how to begin, right? That's what gets us stuck in the mental paralysis. With task paralysis, this brings a flavor of dread or fear or boredom into the scenario. For example, maybe you need to write a report for work, but you keep putting it off because you're worried that it's not going to be good enough. And so you keep creating different outlines and getting ready to write the report, trying to get yourself set up and get all your spaces just right before you begin. But you never actually start writing the report because you're worried that it won't be good enough or you'll get criticism from your boss. Or maybe you want to get the house cleaned, but you just can't seem to get started. You are dreading it. It's not fun. The smell of the cleaner gives you a headache. You have all of these different reasons to create a sense of dread in your body. So you make yourself busy doing literally anything else other than cleaning. I know for myself, I personally tend to face task paralysis when it comes to calling and making appointments, especially when I'm calling to figure out details about things like insurance or banking or anything that requires specific details and information and waiting on hold and people asking questions that I don't know the answers to. All of that creates so much dread in my body, and I want to avoid it at all possible costs, right? And my body goes into this paralysis and I cannot get started. And then we have the third category, right? And the third category is choice paralysis. I often talk about it as analysis paralysis on the podcast. You've probably heard me talk about that before. So this is when we are faced with so many different options that we feel frozen in making a decision to move forward. We spin and spin and spin. We think about the pros and the cons. We research all the reviews on every website about the product. We go back and forth between the specs on every offer. Our brains get so swamped with the details that they struggle to see the big picture, right? We can't see the forest for the trees. We can't decide. So we get stuck in that paralysis. And just like the other examples, this type of paralysis can show up on the big or the small scale. So maybe you spend a lot of time in the morning trying on different outfits because you can't decide what to wear or what your brain decides looks good on any given day. Or maybe you're trying to decide where to go for dinner and you go back and forth between all the different restaurant options. And then you're looking at options in the fridge and all of a sudden it's so late and you've been going back and forth and you're so hungry that you just make oatmeal again. And if that sounds oddly specific, that's because it literally happened to me last week. Or maybe it's a big thing. You want to make a career shift and you're literally asking yourself the question, what do I want to do with this next chapter of my life? And your brain freaks out and shuts down because that's way too big of a question with way too many options and it has no idea where to start. So again, we have mental paralysis, we have task paralysis, and we have choice paralysis. And as I mentioned, I wouldn't get too tripped up in making sure you identify the exact right category for the thing you're navigating. Instead, I encourage you to use these different categories as kind of a general gauge. Do you notice that you tend to find yourself stuck in one category more than the others? For example, I know I tend to get stuck more so in task paralysis when it comes to administrative things, specifically around making phone calls. And then I get stuck in choice paralysis anytime I'm thinking about traveling or making plans that kind of really move outside my usual routine. Now, my experience with ADHD paralysis overall, honestly, it used to be so much more often than that. Really, before I had my diagnosis, I could have probably put all of my actions into one of these three buckets. But as I have learned how to support my brain and which tools are best for me and my unique situation, I don't find myself stuck nearly as often in these paralysis situations. I mean, it still happens, of course, because I'm human and I have ADHD. There are still plenty of days when my executive functions do not show up for work. And when that happens, I do notice it happens most often in task paralysis and choice paralysis. But as I'm doing reflection in real time on this episode, it's actually kind of powerful to notice how much less it happens as I've developed the supports and the scaffolding that work for my brain. So I encourage you to take a moment and check in with yourself. Do you notice this ADHD paralysis coming up for you? And if so, when do you notice it most often? Do you notice any of the three subcategories occurring more often or at certain times or during certain activities? All of this is really beautiful data to gather for yourself so that you have this greater awareness. Because once you have this information gathered, once you have this deeper awareness, then we get to move forward. Okay? Once you have a better understanding of ADHD paralysis and how it shows up and what it looks like, here's what we can do. First and foremost, before you move forward and try and take action or move out of the paralysis state, it's really important to check in and help regulate your nervous system and ground yourself. Okay? Also, My neighbor has just started doing yard work. They decided it was a great plan on Monday at 2:50 p.m. So if you hear the lawnmower and leaf blowers happening, my apologies. I will try and edit them out, but I don't know if I'll be able to. Okay. So like I said, before we dive in, before we start moving forward and getting out of the paralysis, first and foremost, it's really important to check in with yourself. Okay. We really want to ground yourself. So don't try and force yourself into action. Don't tell yourself you just need to try harder or push more, because I promise you that is not the answer. That's not it. Okay. So before you start trying to take action on whatever it is you're navigating, check in with yourself. Take some slow breaths. Notice how it feels when you inhale. Notice how it feels when you exhale. You don't have to do any specific breathing techniques if you don't want to. If you do, if you know some breathing techniques, if they work for you, go for it. But what's most important here is that we're slowing down and we're checking in with your body. Notice where you have any tension in your muscles. Are your shoulders up by your ears? Are your hands really tight? Is your jaw clenched? Is your stomach clenched? What would it look like if you relaxed those areas one by one? You could try and label your emotions. If you notice that you're feeling some emotions, what are you feeling right now? Are you feeling annoyed or anxious or overwhelmed, rejected, worried? At the same time, you might not know the specific emotions you're feeling. Sometimes we can't really put a name on the emotion. That's okay too. We can just describe how it feels. What are the sensations in your body? Maybe it feels like buzzing in your arms, or like someone's squeezing your lungs, or your stomach is churning, right? How does it actually feel in your body? Notice that. Now, if you're feeling particularly dysregulated, you may also want to step away from the task for a little bit, okay? Go for a walk, snuggle with your pet, listen to your favorite playlist and move your body for a bit. Spend some time in nature. Notice the breeze on your face. Notice the sun. Listen to the sound of the birds outside. I know this may seem kind of off what we're talking about, but I'm telling you, it's everything. We need to calm our nervous system first before we start moving into action. Because when we're in ADHD paralysis, it's frozen, right? We're not going to be able to take action until the nervous system is more settled and feels safe. Okay, so do whatever you need to do to help soothe your mind and body. Do it with so much love, because that is number one. That's the first step you need right now. Then once you're grounded, here comes the key question. If you remember at the beginning of the episode, I told you I'm going to tell you one key question. It is such a powerful question. Okay, so are you ready for this? This is the single question that I want you to ask yourself anytime that you notice yourself stuck in paralysis. Okay, so listen up, come back. If you got distracted, tune in. Here is the most important question to ask yourself after you've grounded yourself, after you've taken care of your nervous system, and you find yourself in paralysis. As you think about the thing that you want to do, ask yourself, am I stuck in plan, act, or complete? So as you think about the thing you want to do, ask yourself, am I stuck in plan, act, or complete? This question is so very important. It is so very valuable. Also, don't worry, I'm going to tell you what it means. I'm going to give you some context so it makes sense. But again, this is the most important question to ask yourself anytime you're stuck. So here's the deal. I created my Plan, Act, Complete framework a couple of years ago now after working with hundreds of ADHD brains. Okay, this framework is so simple and it's also so effective. It is absolutely critical in helping us with ADHD move forward. Here's why. The process of getting anything done with an ADHD brain can be categorized into one of three stages: creating a plan, taking action on that plan, and following through to completion. That's it. Those three things: plan, act, complete. And when we can start identifying where we are stuck and then know what supports we need to help us unthaw and move forward. That is everything. Okay, so I'm going to give you some specifics on how to know whether you're in plan, act, or complete. And this will help you figure out how it works so that you can check in with yourself and know where you are so you know what supports you need. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have these 3 categories to get anything done with an ADHD brain. We have plan, act, and complete. How do you know if you're in plan? Well, you know if you are stuck in planning when your brain doesn't seem to have a sense of direction. So we're usually stuck in plan when we're facing too much information. We don't know where to start. We have too many ideas and we don't know what's most important. We're struggling with prioritizing. Or maybe we have too much to do and we have no idea how we're going to get it all done. We're trying to manage our time and figure out how everything will fit together. Or maybe we're looking at this massive project or this giant goal that's going to take months to complete. And because our timeline, our ADHD time horizon is so short, our brain freaks out. We're thinking, I have no idea how I'm going to map out this plan. I don't know how this will work. Where do I even begin? Okay, so when you're stuck in plan, it's when you need to prioritize or when you aren't quite sure of what done looks like. You all know that's one of my favorite questions, right? What does done look like? If we haven't defined that yet, we're still stuck in plan. We're stuck in plan when you don't really know specifically what you're trying to do. We're stuck in plan when we don't know when we're going to work on that project or whether we even have enough time to do it, right? If we don't know when we're going to work on it and how much time we need, we're probably stuck in plan. We're probably stuck in plan if we don't know the specific steps to get started. Right? If we have a big thing, let's say you have a goal to write a book, but you haven't written down any of the steps, it's going to be very hard to get started. We're probably still stuck in plan. Okay, so ask yourself, am I stuck in plan, act, or complete? And if you notice any of those scenarios that I just mentioned, you're probably stuck in plan. Okay, if you're struggling with prioritization, with creating a schedule, with knowing how your projects and your goals are going to fit in that schedule, with how much time you want to allocate to it, with breaking down the project into different smaller steps, you're probably stuck in plan. From there, we move to act. So maybe you're thinking to yourself, no, I actually do have my plan. I know exactly what I'm working on. I know when I'm working on it. I've even prioritized the smaller steps within my project. I mean, I got a plan. The problem is I'm just not getting started on it. Okay, if this situation sounds familiar, you're probably stuck in act. Okay, so you're stuck in act if you find yourself thinking, again, I know what to do. I have the plan. I'm just not doing the plan. I'm not getting started on it. Maybe the steps are too big and your brain can't figure out how to begin because it's too big of a leap. It's not a baby step to get started. It's like this giant hurdle. Or maybe you're navigating dread or fear about what other people will think when they see you getting started on this goal or working toward this project. Maybe you're worried that you're doing it wrong or you're going to get bad feedback. So you delay getting started. You may also be stuck in act if there are decisions to make. So many of us have a hard time getting started because we need to make some decisions first. We don't know which option to choose or which one we should pick. So we spin instead of getting started. For example, maybe I don't get started planning my vacation because I don't know where I want to go or the dates I want to travel. Maybe you want to get started on the next section of an article you're writing, but you're faced with so many different options in which you could take your argument that you feel really paralyzed. You don't know which path to choose. So in this situation, if you find yourself stuck, again, ask yourself, am I stuck in plan, act, or complete? And if you notice any of the situations I just mentioned now, in regard to taking action, with making decisions, with your steps being too big, right? Anything like that, you're probably stuck in act. Now, let's say you did get started and you broke down the steps and you made your decisions and now you're facing completion. You're in that last 20%. You're facing the detail work. And you're either so bored that you can't fathom sticking with this same project when you have so many other new brilliant ideas vying for your attention, or You're struggling to even see why this project is so important anymore. It's basically lost its novelty, it's lost its spark. Your brain wants something new and different. Or maybe perfectionism is sneaking in here and you're starting to question whether what you've created is actually good enough. So rather than finishing, you keep tweaking and adjusting in order to get things, quote unquote, just right. Or maybe you notice that imposter syndrome enters the picture and your brain starts questioning who you even think you are to be giving this presentation or making an offer in your business. And your brain worries that you're going to be found out, that you're a fraud, that you're not good enough to be finishing this product or putting it out in the world. So many of us get stuck in this complete phase because of all the different emotions that might get in the way, whether it's sheer boredom or fear or rejection or self-doubt. These emotions can really keep us stuck. So again, in this situation, if you notice that you're stuck, ask yourself, okay, am I stuck in plan, act, or complete? And if you're noticing that boredom is pulling you to start something new, or perfectionism or imposter syndrome is sneaking in and you're questioning what you're creating, if any of these situations sound familiar, you're likely stuck in complete. So again, whenever you notice yourself in this ADHD paralysis, you're usually going to be stuck within one of these three stages: plan, act, or complete. And this means that once we've regulated our nervous system, once we've taken care of ourselves, we've grounded ourselves, we can check in and we can ask ourselves, okay, I know I'm probably stuck in one of these three. Am I stuck in plan, act, or complete? And then once you have your answer, that is when you can find the tools you need to move forward. So maybe you find that you're stuck in planning and you realize that what you need is to prioritize. You go, you know what? I haven't really made a plan, and it's because I have so many things and I don't know what's most important. What I need is to prioritize. Well, then you could hop onto my website, search for prioritization, and find some episodes on that. Press play. You'll find the tools you need to move forward. Honestly, the same goes for any of those: task initiation, right? Act, follow through, and complete. In fact, if you haven't downloaded my podcast roadmap yet, I highly encourage you to do so, because it not only has my top 10 episodes to work with your ADHD brain to kind of get you into all the different tools that I teach, but also in that same document, I have categories of some of my most frequently played episodes according to these different types. So topics of time management, task initiation, follow through, goal setting, perfectionism, self-concept work, right? They're all categorized there for you to find the supports you need. I mean, frankly, wherever you're stuck, there's a good chance I have at least one podcast about it. So grab that roadmap if you haven't yet. You can get it at I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/map, or you can just tap through the link in the show notes as well. Additionally, if you are looking to take this work even deeper, if you are looking for real-time support and coaching from me in figuring out how to shape all of these different tools and supports to work with your unique brain in your current season of life, I would love for you to join us in the next round of We're Busy Being Awesome. Enrollment is currently open. So this episode comes out on October 16th. Tomorrow, October 17th, I'm teaching a free training called Vision to Action, which you are all welcome to join. It's about realizing your goals and closing out Q4 strong. And then our group officially begins October 26th. So We're Busy Being Awesome, my small group program, it is literally built around my Plan, Act, Complete framework. So the program is 4 months long. And in the first month, we focus on laying the groundwork. Okay. This first month is all about creating the foundation on which we build up all of our ADHD scaffolding. So we learn my ADHD friendly approach to goal setting. We learn how to practice the pause and actually use it in our lives. I swear this is the secret to everything. We learn how to coach our brains and work through all of those beliefs that we've developed about ourselves and our ADHD throughout our lives. We start building up your self-trust, your confidence, so that when you start learning all the different productivity tools and supports and approaches, you know you can make them happen. You know you can make them work for you because you're moving through those beliefs that might hold you back. Then we get to month 2, which is all about planning, right? Plan in our Plan, Act, Complete. So we learn all about planning in month 2. You learn my approach to prioritization, to time budgeting, to creating a schedule that's supportive of you and your lifestyle and your brain. We all have different ways of approaching scheduling. We all prefer different levels of structure and support, and we figure that out together in month 2. From there, we get to act in month 3, and this is where you develop the supports your brain needs for task initiation. How do you build that on-ramp to make getting started so much smoother? How do we move through analysis paralysis and start making decisions with confidence? You learn how to do all of that in month 3, act. And then we get to month 4, which is all about completion. You learn how to reignite your commitment to your projects and your goals, even when you're so bored and you just want to get to the new ideas. You learn how to stick with it and follow through on the things that matter to you. You learn how to challenge the imposter syndrome that sneaks in and work through those fears that have your perfectionism on high alert, has you tweaking and adjusting, rather than allowing yourself to finish the work and move to the next thing. And you learn how to do all of this with confidence as you recognize and celebrate your successes along the way. I'm telling you, this 4-month program provides you with everything you need to build the ADHD toolkit for your unique brain. And because this is a small group coaching program, you don't just get the tools, we also meet each week for coaching to help ensure that we move through any obstacles, any roadblocks. We work together to adapt the tools to work for your season and your specific situation. We are all in different seasons of life. No two ADHD brains are alike. And this is why I think it's so powerful to have someone on your team. Somebody there to help support you and figure out what works best for you. And because the group is small, because it's capped at 15 people, you don't get lost in the crowd. You can't slip through the cracks. This space is designed to ensure you get the support you need. And you also have the power of connecting with other incredible ADHD brains who actually get it. They know what it's like to work 10 times as hard as everybody else just to try and keep up. They know what it's like to be seeking support and questioning why these traditional productivity tools and approaches just don't work, even though they're trying so hard. And when you hear one another get coached on these calls, I'm telling you, it's remarkable how much you can learn and grow in your own life. Because we are all navigating such similar experiences with ADHD brains. And when we can hear one another get coached, it can really help us put our own situations into perspective. I'm telling you, it's like magic. Now, like I said, the group is open for enrollment right now. As I'm recording this, we are a couple of weeks out. There's a handful of people already enrolled. So I do encourage you to pop over and sign up if this sounds like your jam, if you're ready to join us. It is going to be such an incredible cohort. I mean, I love that we get to close out this year from the end of October through December, and we get to do it together with intention and purpose. And then on the other side, we get to kick off the new year with clarity and direction all the way through February. It is such fun timing. So if you've been thinking about joining us, I would love for you to do so. And if you want to read more about the program or read any testimonials of people who have joined us in the past, you can head to the link in the show notes or head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/group. Similarly, if you have questions or you want to talk through the program, I would love to chat. You can either send me a message over on Instagram. I am at I'mBusyBeingAwesome, or you can head to that same page, I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/group. You will see at the bottom of the page, I have a calendar where you can sign up for a time for us to chat on Zoom. And we'll talk through any questions you have. We can make sure that it's a good fit for you right now in this season. I'm telling you, this is going to be awesome. And I cannot wait to see you in there. All right, my friends, that's going to do it for us this week. And if you're ready to take these concepts deeper and apply them to your life, I would love to have you join us in We're Busy Being Awesome. Again, head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/group to join us. Similarly, if you have a friend navigating ADHD and you think they'd benefit from this episode or would want to learn more about the group, please share this episode with them. Also, have you grabbed the podcast roadmap yet? It has the most popular episodes all detailed for you, so you can get yourself up to speed and ready to work with your ADHD brain. You can grab it now through the show notes or head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/map. Until next time, keep being awesome. I'll talk with you soon.